Good morning. Today I want to do a brief video on the upcoming lunar month, which will go from about the new moon on August 16th, 2023, until the next new moon on September 14th, August 2023. So let's see if I can share my screen and we'll get started. I need to make a few quick adjustments here. Let's see, it'll take just a second. We're getting there. Okay, and let's see, one more change here, excuse me. All right, I think I'm ready to go. So, this is the lunar month for the world, America, Trump, and Putin. August 16th, 2023 through September 14th, 2023. Okay. Now, this is a chart of the new moon on August 16th, and I'm showing only those aspects that are within 1 degree of being exact. So these are going to be the things that are uh, strongest in this chart. And let me just make a few comments here. Of course, one thing we see is that the planet Uranus is making a very strong square to the conjunction of Sun and Moon. Now, this new moon chart, it sets a certain tone for the entire month, but some of the aspects within it may fade quickly. They still continue as kind of an underlying tone, but the current aspects for a given day may speak with a louder voice. They may override it. Nonetheless, let's talk a little bit about this underlying tone. Uranus square the Sun-Moon conjunction, uh, that promises a lot of surprises, a certain amount of disruption. Uranus always likes to break up the existing pattern. With Sun and Moon in Leo, there's kind of an emphasis on personal creativity and doing things that a person likes to do, things that give them pleasure. Uh, the sign of Taurus that Uranus is in, it also has to do with things that we enjoy, but uh, that becomes things we value, and that in turn relates to money and possessions. So there might be, for instance, some sort of conflict between things over here that we would like to do and how much money we can actually afford to spend on those things. Two competing urges. There may be some hiccups in the economy. We'll just have to wait and see. Now, let me point this out. The planet Mars in Virgo is making a strong trine to Uranus and Taurus. And this means that these two drives will work together quite well. Uranus, the drive for creativity, novel ideas, breaking up the existing pattern. That works well with our drive for action, our urge to get things done. And since Mars is in Virgo, this is attention to details. So we might say that attention to details will be an avenue in which our creativity can manifest. Now, Mars is also making a semisextile, a strong semisextile to this Sun-Moon conjunction in Leo. And semisextiles and inconjuncts, those aspects are shown in green here. They tend to require adjustment of various sorts. Okay, so our drive for action is going to have to compete a little bit with our desires for creativity and pleasure, personal creation down here, and things won't work out entirely smoothly. Adjustments will have to be made. But this is the point I want to get at. We have a triangle being formed here. Uh, one leg of the triangle, one side is the square, which is rather difficult. It shows planetary drives having difficulty coordinating with one another. Uh, Another side is represented by this trine, which represents drives that do coordinate their functions with one another. And the third side is a semisextile, and this side represents drives that can function together if adjustments are made. So since we have this particular configuration, there is a final story to be told here. We initially experienced disruption from the planet Uranus when it comes to our pursuit of personal pleasure and creativity. But there's a way in which we can get around it because of this trine between Uranus and Mars. If we focus on the details of uh, what is going on, then we can make adjustments and get maybe not all that we want, but maybe some of we want. So this is a way in which it can work out. And even though this configuration is not going to last very long, it'll be gone in a day or two. Nonetheless, because the new moon is a time of increased intensity, this sets a little bit of a tone for the coming lunar month. But this will operate more in the background as other transits come to the foreground. Now, the other thing I want to point out here is we have the planet Neptune in Pisces making both a quincunx and a semisextile to the lunar nodes, to the lunar nodal axis. We have a semisextile to the north node, a quincunx to the south node. Now, the lunar nodal axis, it adds intensity to things. It's kind of an uncontrollable energy. You can't wish it away or sweep it under the rug. At best, you can surf it well. And these aspects, the semisextile and the quincunx, as I said, they often denote that adjustments have to be made. And in that respect, they are, um, they denote changes. They are aspects of change. Now, Neptune in Pisces has to do with our dreams, our visions. At worst, however, it could have to do with misinformation. But let's think of it for the moment in terms of our uh, dreams, visions, and inspirations. They are going to be intensified a little bit by these aspects to the lunar nodal axis, but most likely adjustments will have to be made. And since Neptune is moving retrograde, uh, these adjustments may take place internally. We may have to think about things, reevaluate the visions that we have, and make certain adjustments based upon what is feasible, what can actually be brought into reality. Now, these aspects, the semisextile and the quincunx, they're going to be important because they're going to be in effect for pretty much the entire lunar month, at least 3/4 of it. And let's see, we also have Mercury in Virgo making a quincunx to Chiron in Aries. Uh, this also sets a tone, another tone for the lunar month, but aside from that, it's going to be an aspect that goes away fairly quickly. But at least for this day, Mercury in Virgo, it focuses on practical matters, on details. Chiron really wants to urge us towards transcendence, but can cause wounding in the process if we're not flexible enough, if we're not open. That, as I say, that hard Saturnian shell needs to be cracked before these higher energies, before the light can come in. So there's a little bit of an impetus on this day for higher spiritual energies to try and make their way into our consciousness, represented over here by Mercury, our left brain, this left brain that's now being very practically oriented and detail oriented because of its presence in Mercury. The quincunx, again, it suggests adjustments have to be made. So, on this day in particular, uh, if you feel something pushing on your consciousness, you might want to just relax and let it in. Let these higher spiritual energies come in, and then this will be there in the background for the rest of the lunar month, even though it won't be as strong probably as the current transits of the day. Okay, let's go on to the next slide here. Uh, Here I have ephemeris for August, ephemeris for September. And the lunar month is about from mid-August through mid-September. Now, looking at this, you're probably not going to be able to read this, but this is why I want you to notice. Uh, Everything in red denotes a planet in retrograde. Now, the column on the far right is the north node of the moon. This is the true node, and that's almost always moving retrograde, so nothing unusual here. Don't worry about this one. But look at all the other planets we have moving retrograde. During this lunar month, except for the sun and the moon, which never go retrograde, and except for Mars, our drive for action and activity, our energy, that will always be moving forward, never retrograde, but everything else at some point is going to be retrograde. Uh, and during a good deal of this lunar month, we will have 7 planets moving retrograde. Now, it often seems like around August, September, we get a lot of planets moving retrograde. And this time around, the number of retrograde planets seems to really be at a maximum. And when a planet moves retrograde, the drive that it represents is internalized more. It doesn't operate, express itself as easily in the outer world, but more internally. And with so many planets moving retrograde, that suggests that this lunar month is kind of a time for contemplation, a time to stop for a moment, take stock of where we've been, what's going on, and think about where we want to go into the future. Since Mars will always be moving direct, we won't stop our actions. We won't stop being active in the world. We can still continue doing those things we usually do in terms of activity, but everything else at some point during this month is going to take that pause to look at things internally and reevaluate what's going on and where we want to go. Okay, now let's move on. For the rest of this slideshow, I'm not going to be looking at charts so much as I will look at graphs of transits like this. This is a very handy bar graph which shows us what aspects from Pluto on out will be occurring. And I'm going to start looking at just transit to transit aspects. And I put a little box here going from about mid-August to mid-September because that's the period for the upcoming lunar month. And I'll also be looking at some midpoints. I'll start looking at aspects made transit to transit. Then I'll look at transit to natal aspects and midpoints for America. And let's see, then transit to natal aspects for Mr. Trump, along with midpoints. And then I'll do the same with Putin. And we'll see what things look like. Those will give us an idea of how some important things may play out. Okay, now when we look at these transit to transit aspects, it's not all that busy for August. We do have Neptune making a semisextile to the north node, which means it'll making a quincunx to the south node. And I talked about this already. It was going on before the start of the lunar month. It becomes exact on August 14th, 2 days actually before the new moon, and it continues throughout most of this lunar month period. So we've already talked about that. This one is important, and we haven't talked about it. Saturn is making a semi-square to Chiron. Saturn is restriction, regulation. Chiron is that drive to transcend physical reality, but when applied to the masses, it often results in wounding. As I often say, 90% perspiration, 10% inspiration, by which I mean 90% of the people often wind up being wounded, but 10% are inspired. And this is also going to be exact on August 14th, and it lasts through more than half of the lunar month. Now, the semi-square, it's a turning point of sorts. It's halfway in between, let's see, a semisextile and a sextile. It's halfway between a conjunction and a square. It often acts as sort of a minor irritation because it's trying to get us to change direction. Like I say, it's a turning point of some sort. It can cause some friction, not as bad as a square, but what this can mean is that there can be some a little bit of irritation or wounding to us during this period. In particular, Saturn in Pisces is trying to make our visions, our dreams concrete. But there may be some difficulty with that, some disruption. Chiron in Aries may impede or wound that process to some extent. So this will also be happening and throughout most of the upcoming lunar month. It's actually going on now. So you may feel that bit of irritation to things. In the background, that little bit of frustration. Okay, now as we move on to America, well, the chart that I prefer to use for America is the July 2nd, 1776 chart. This is the chart for the passage of the Resolution for Independence by the Continental Congress. 2 days later, on July 4th, it was passed on to General George Washington, and he was given the go-ahead. But I often find that this chart works maybe a little bit more accurately. I'm not discounting any of the July 4th charts. I think they work too. I just think the July 2nd often works a little better. Also, because we don't always know exact times for mundane events, I've set this up as more of a generic chart with 0 degrees Aries rising rather than 7 degrees Libra rising, which this time would give us. Okay, and a few of the things we see in this chart are we got Sun, Mercury, Venus, a lot of personal planets down here in Cancer. This represents the Americans' affection and connection with their homeland, and a sense of insecurity we often feel about our safety in our country. Uh, in opposition to that, at least by sign, is Pluto. Pluto in Capricorn. We have sort of this fear of dictators and autocratic rulers. And Pluto is also in a close opposition to Mercury down here in the fourth house of the homeland in Cancer, the sign that rules the homeland. But in this July 2nd chart, we have the moon at 25 degrees Capricorn. So at the same time, in our persona, we like to be the ones in control. We have sort of this underlying fear, insecurity about things, but we put on a brave face and we try to be the ones that are controlling things. Um, let's see, also in this chart, we have Neptune in Virgo making a square to Mars and Gemini. And this often results in aggressive actions being taken as a result of misinformation and delusions. Uh, it's interesting. Neptune does not do well in Virgo. Virgo is opposite Neptune's home sign of Pisces. Neptune wants to have visions and transcendent inspirations, and these are things which have sort of fuzzy boundaries, but Virgo wants to make everything precise and exact and give everything very clear, mathematically defined boundaries. And when you put the two of these together, it can often result in us coming up with sort of what I'll call illogical logical arguments to justify our delusions. And then uh, with the square to Mars, we fly off the handle and go into aggressive mode. Okay, another thing going on here, which is important in the USA chart, is we have a somewhat wide opposition between Saturn in Libra and Chiron in Aries. Now, there are both positive and negative ways in which this has worked out in our country's history. At its best, we are champions for the spiritual dignity and worth of every single person. Words such as are enshrined in the Declaration for Independence. We find these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal, which today we would expand to include everyone as spiritual worth and dignity. That is the higher expression of this. But when we don't have the higher expression, we wind up wounding people. The higher points wind up being suppressed, and then instead, we express Saturn in Libra in a negative way. We try to control and regulate others. And that has been a plague upon our country throughout its history. For various reasons, we have always endeavored to control certain groups within our country and to control other countries in ways which are beneficial to us, but not always beneficial to them. Okay, so that's just sort of the background on the chart that I'm going to be using for America. Now let's look at the transits. Well, let's see. Here are the transits and the hard transits from mid-August through mid-September. And a few things I notice here. Let's go down to this one. Saturn making a semi-square to Chiron. Well, that was happening in the world at large, but Chiron right now, transiting Chiron, is very close to natal Chiron in all of these July 1776 charts. So the frustration, that sort of minor irritation, minor wounding, and frustration that's going on in the world now, it's going on in America in particular. And there are things going on with Chiron in America, which are causing great wounding to the country, which has actually been going on all summer. I'll talk about that in just a second. But Saturn semi-square Chiron is adding to that, and that becomes exact on August 9th. I'm making this video on August 8th, so it'll be interesting to see what happens within the next 24 hours. This fades out uh, after about a week and a half, but fading in is transiting Pluto conjunct natal Pluto. Now, we're not going to have an exact conjunction again, but we're going to have a near conjunction, which is going to be active throughout most of the fall. And uh, this represents, remember, Pluto is death and transformation. And we had exact conjunctions of transiting Pluto to natal Pluto in 2022. And I think maybe even into 2023, I have to go back, look at the exact date. I've been right at, it's probably at the end of 2022. But uh, this is death and transformation. And every time this has happened, our country has been faced with existential threats, either from within or from without. Uh, During these past conjunctions, we saw Russia invade Ukraine, and that is a threat to other NATO countries, which makes it a threat to us. So Russia has really become the threat from without, but at the same time, uh, during some other conjunctions in that year, what has been in the news has been the work of the January 6th committee, studying that insurrection. So our democracy also has these threats from within. Now, this fall, we have another near conjunction, not exact, but very close. It lasts throughout most of the fall. So I'm expecting some turmoil, probably from within, maybe also from without. Given the way things are going, there may be uh, some riots or physical confrontations related to current political events. Okay, let's go back up to the top here. Transiting Chiron, conjunct natal Chiron. Again, this is not exact, but it's been a near conjunction, which has been in effect all summer. And under previous uh, Chiron conjunctions of transiting Chiron to natal Chiron, we had a slew of those in the early 70s. First, an opposition to natal Saturn, then conjunct natal Chiron, and our July 1776 charts. That corresponded with the political wounding of Watergate, wounding caused by President Nixon and also President Agnew during that period. He had to leave office in a plea deal to avoid going to jail over illegal activities he had participated in. Well, we're going through the same stuff now. We've been through the oppositions. We're going into the conjunctions, and we'll get a couple of exact conjunctions in 2024, and I think a third exact conjunction in early 2025. So, in addition to the threats to our democracy, represented by transiting Pluto conjunct natal Pluto, we're also going through a lot of political wounding. And interestingly, during that period in the early 70s when we had this kind of thing going on, well, in 1973, that's when Roe v. Wade became the law of the land, and women uh, were given the right to have control over their own bodies. In 2022, that became an issue again, and that right was taken away. And so that's created turmoil and wounding. Okay, now another thing we have here is look at this North Node square Moon, North Node square Mercury, North Node square Pluto. This one is kind of ending, but basically the lunar nodal axis has been making a strong square to natal Pluto in the USA chart, and it's going to be making very soon strong squares to both Moon and Mercury in the natal chart, that July 2nd, 1776 chart for America. That intensified things, and so people have been and will continue to feel sort of an underlying irritation, or sort of like I can't quite unwind, I can't quite relax here. And even though the one involving Pluto is fading, it's on the way out. It'll be exact on the 12th and then quickly fade. Um, let's see, by the beginning of September, actually a little before, the ones involving Moon and Mercury, they're going to be increasing intensity. And now you can see a slew of times when it becomes exact in September. So, uh, certainly throughout the second half of the lunar month and beyond into September, there's probably going to be that underlying uh, feeling of intensity and difficulty in being able to unwind and relax. And we're going to be going through, of course, some more uh, wounding to our country, probably of an internal political nature. And I might also point out, since I'm talking about parallels between now and the early 70s, we had the environmental movement becoming very popular, gaining steam in the early 70s. Today, we're seeing the severe effects of global warming, which seem to be getting worse each year. Okay, last thing we have here, which will be active throughout this entire lunar month, is going to be a semi-square between transiting Jupiter and Taurus and Venus and Cancer. Venus rules our right brain. It's what we like, what we don't like. That translates into what we value, what we don't value, what we think is good, what we think is not good. Uh, it results in a nonverbal map of the world for us, saying, yeah, this is good, this is not good, go to this, avoid that. Jupiter and Taurus, again, this can have to do with financial affairs. And Jupiter wants to expand. And uh, with Venus in Cancer, uh, we can be feeling, as a nation, we have a certain amount of insecurity about things. And the semi-square from Jupiter to natal Venus in this USA chart, it could exaggerate, magnify those insecurities a little bit, things that we worry about. And in particular, uh, Americans may have financial worries throughout this period. Even though the economy in theory is doing pretty well, there's a problem. For a long time, actually since the 70s, there has been a wealth pump, which has transferred wealth from the middle class more and more to the one percenters and to the 0.1 percenters in particular. And that has been going on for decades, and it's reaching a critical point now. And uh, historical analysis has shown that when nations reach such a critical point, uh, they tend to collapse if they don't readjust the flow of that wealth pump and put more money back into the middle class. So even though by many measures the economy is actually doing quite well, a lot of us aren't feeling it that much. Prices are still high. Wages are still suppressed, and we're having difficulties. And that will probably be present throughout all of August, and Americans will be feeling rather worried and insecure as a result. Okay, now we'll look at some uh, midpoints here. Midpoints are points halfway between two planets in a chart, and as such, they are also turning points. And turning points are when things can happen because energy is changing direction. And midpoints tend to be sort of a blend of the nature of all the plants involved. And it looks like the biggest thing going on here is Chiron conjunct the Sun-Pluto midpoint. That's in effect throughout the entire lunar month. It becomes exact on the 28th, and it's actually been in effect for quite a while. We had a conjunction of Chiron with this midpoint earlier this summer, I believe, back in June. And so, what does this all represent? Well, Sun is the self and often represents the ruler of our nation. Pluto is power. And so, this is going to be a point of power for the ruler or rulers of our nation. It doesn't necessarily have to be the president, it could be a person with power in Congress or the Supreme Court, or even a former president that still has a lot of clout, a lot of power, like Donald Trump. Chiron wants to bring transcendence, but often results in wounding, particularly as it applies to the masses. So, when Chiron makes this exact conjunction, you expect there to be some wounding around this period. And I believe around the time of this conjunction back in June, some indictments came down for Donald Trump. And what's interesting is that this conjunction of Chiron with this midpoint will be exact on August 28th. And that is when Donald Trump appears back in court again. And the judge will set a date for the trial for his indictments that are related to the January 26th insurrection. So I'm based on past history and the way things have previously gone. I'm expecting a lot of wounding to the country related to Donald Trump and his activities. Now, the North Node will be conjunct the Mercury Pluto midpoint for most of this lunar month. The conjunction is exact on August 26th, just a couple of days before August 28th, that August 28th court date. And of course, the South Node will be in opposition to this midpoint. In other words, the lunar nodal axis is intensifying things. Mercury is our left brain. Pluto is that very strong energy of death and transformation. So again, uh, verbal opinions about things may be very strong, and people may be feeling a lot of mental stress this month. We have Uranus in opposition to the Moon Neptune midpoint. It's not all that strong, but does continue throughout the month. Now, Moon and Neptune are similar in many ways. This is imagination coupled with a higher vision. So, in Uranus, it disrupts the pattern. It has a lot to do with creativity. So, what's going to be going on? Well, uh, I think in the background, uh, people are going to be trying to come up with some creative solutions to things. They're going to be dreaming dreams, having visions. This is a good time, particularly for those who meditate and who contemplate regularly, to try and come up with some new visions for the future. This aspect that's not going to be very strong, but does persist throughout the month. So try and come up with some creative solutions to some of these difficult problems we have. Now, in the first part, first maybe week and a half of this lunar month, we have Saturn in opposition to this Mercury Saturn midpoint. Uh, it's going to be exact on the 12th. And again, this represents, I think, some underlying frustration with things. Another sign that our right brains, Mercury, they're going to feel frustrated. Things are not going to flow as quickly. So don't bang your head against the wall. If doors are not opening up, if there are delays, just be calm and go with it. Just plod along, but uh, don't bang your head against the wall at this time. If a door is locked, it's probably just going to stay locked for a while, but things will clear up. Uh, Uranus Chiron midpoint, well, this can actually be very positive. At its worst, it could be very wounding. But this is a higher creativity combined with this higher urge to transcend. Jupiter expands things, and this is going to be exact today. Continues for a week and a half into the next lunar month, comes back towards the end, but it's exact on August 8th. That's the day that I'm making this video. So, since you'll probably be seeing this video after the fact, I hope that you did some good meditation and thinking about things today. Again, coming up with creative ways to heal people in the world. Uh, but for the masses, there may be some sudden events today which result in wounding. I'll be checking it out, and we'll just have to wait and see what happens. Okay. Now, there are also a few good aspects. The trines are shown in blue, and semisextiles, quincunxes are shown in green. And let's see what's in effect here. We have Chiron making a sextile to Mars. So that's in effect throughout most of the month. This is a good time to engage in physical actions to help heal the world. Uh, Give to charity, uh, volunteer to help someone out. This is a very good time for that, and one way in which you might uh, let, help the world, America, through some of the more difficult aspects. Now, let me point out, when it comes to good and bad aspects, it's not like mixing hot water and cold water together and getting lukewarm water. Instead, it's more like a tossed salad. They're both going to be there at the same time, side by side. Something bad that happens, something good that happens. Nonetheless, uh, those things are sweet, can help us better endure those things which are bitter. So, like I said, this is a good month to help others, to give of your time or your money, uh, your charity to help other people out in America, and a good time to physically engage in acts of loving kindness. Let's see, Neptune, transiting Neptune, making a sextile to natal Pluto. This brings in a higher vibration, a higher transformative kind of vision. Not going to change the world immediately, most likely, and not everyone will respond to it. But some of us were born with this sextile quite exact, and so we will probably respond to it. So again, I hope people open themselves up to higher visions, Uh, think about good ways to transform the country and the world. In a similar vein, transiting Uranus will make a trine to natal Neptune. That has been in effect, will be in effect pretty strongly throughout this upcoming lunar month and get even stronger thereafter. Uh, so once more, we have wounding going on, but we can also engage in creative visions for the future at this time. And with Neptune and Virgo, we can work out the practical details for implementing those creative visions. So, uh, don't forget to engage in these higher creative, transcendent activities. We're at the tail end of Saturn, transing Saturn trine Jupiter, was exact on the 5th. And this has corresponded, I think, to this period of nice growth and business that we have had throughout a lot of the summer. It's going to be in effect through about the first week of this lunar month, and then it fades away. And it's replaced by transiting Jupiter, making a quincunx to natal Saturn. And that suggests that when it comes to growth, we're going to have to make some adjustments to things. Uh, we'll have to make adjustments to our regulations or uh, our approach, the approach and the way that we try and control and regulate things. I'm hoping personally that the Federal Reserve uh, quits raising the interest rates. I would personally like to see them make that adjustment, but we'll see. This has been in effect before this month. It's going to be in effect after it. Okay, now let's take a little look at the Trump of Donald Trump, because he is probably going to have a big impact on things in America. And let's see if we just briefly look at his natal chart. He's pretty much born at the time of the lunar eclipse. And he has his sun as moon conjunct that lunar nodal axis. Uranus is also conjunct the north node. And Sun, North Node, Uranus are all conjunct in the 10th house in Gemini. Because of that, he has this insatiable desire for power. Uh, his 10th house is ruled by Venus. Venus is over here in Cancer, conjunct Saturn. And whenever anything is affecting Saturn or Venus, it tends to affect his personal status in society, his prestige. Uh, he also has Mars and Leo pretty strongly conjunct his ascendant, his rising sign. He's a very energetic and, as we see, a very combative person. Uh, so when something is affecting his Mars, he tends to lash out and fight back. Now, let's see, he has Chiron conjunct his Jupiter, and ideally, at its best, this would produce some very transcendent thought. At its worst, this would produce a lot of wounding. In between, uh, it could also, well, let me say, another positive way this could work out is he could be a healer. But sort of in between healing and being severely wounded himself, he could play the part of someone who's been wounded. He could play the victim card, and we certainly see him do that a lot. Jupiter makes a strong trine to these planets up here in the 10th house. Jupiter's at 17 plus degrees Libra, Uranus at 17 plus degrees Gemini. That has always given him a lot of luck, which has helped him achieve the status that he has. And Jupiter is in his second house of money and possessions, but Libra is also on the cusp of his third house, which rules communication. And he has been a very effective communicator with the public. Uh, that's making a sextile to his moon also. And this has benefited him in his rise to success. Now, the moon rules Sagittarius. I'm sorry, Jupiter rules Sagittarius, and his moon is in Sagittarius. This is down the fourth house, which rules the home, the personal environment. But for Donald Trump, the personal environment is actually his entire family business, his personal empire, all those golf clubs which he and his family members run. And Sagittarius is intercepted in the fourth house. You don't find the sign of Sagittarius on either this cusp or this cusp. And so that means he likes to keep the dealings of his family business hidden. And this is reiterated by the fact that the ruler of Scorpio is Pluto. It's in the 10th house, and I'm sorry, the 12th house. And things in the 12th house also tend to be hidden from view a bit. So he likes to keep his business hidden, his family business, which is synonymous with his home, his personal environment. Okay, so that's a brief overview of who Donald Trump is. Now, if we look at the hard transits during this lunar month, we see that Uranus has been making a semi-square to his Mercury. It doesn't become exact, but it's going to be there in the background throughout the entire month. That is going to make him a little bit more manic, more excited than ever. We're already seeing that, I think. Mercury rules the left brain. Uh, the North Node is going to be making a square to his Venus, and that's going to be pretty strong throughout the entire month. Particularly, it's exact on September 2nd and September 8th. And remember, anything affecting Venus, Venus rules his 10th house, it always tends to impact his prestige, his status in society. So, things concerning his status, they're going to become more intense during this period. Saturn will be making a semi-square to Jupiter. That's going to be mainly in September here. And that is going to be a more minor irritation, not as bad as a square, but nonetheless, this will probably restrict his luck a bit during this period. And particularly around the September 14th when it becomes exact. These other two aspects, they start to go into effect after the upcoming lunar month, but in late September, Chiron, as it goes into opposition to his Jupiter, that could wound his luck even more. And when Neptune, as it makes a sesquiquadrate uh, with his Pluto up here, Saturn's making a sesquiquadrate to Jupiter. I hope I said sesquiquadrate the first time around. When Neptune makes a sesquiquadrate to his Pluto, well, there might be revelations about those things in his personal business that he has tried to keep hidden. But that's going to be beyond this upcoming lunar month. Okay, if we look at uh, conjunctions or oppositions to midpoints in his chart, we have just two, which are going to be prominent here. Uh, one is this transiting North Node in opposition to his Moon ascendant midpoint, which means the South Node will be conjunct that. Uh, This is going to intensify things one way or another in his personal life. Things are going to affect him very personally, and that's going to be in effect throughout most of the month. Saturn in opposition to the Saturn Chiron midpoint, that looks a little bit more serious with Saturn representing restriction, Chiron, possible wounding. Uh, that reaches its maximum point on August 20th. And that also is right before that August 28th court date, not long before that. So it looks like there are going to be uh, tensions, wounding problem that he has to deal with, putting it into context with what's going on with our country. I think there's going to be a lot of political and legal turmoil uh, and wounding for our country related to the actions and problems of Mr. Trump. Now, we have a few good aspects here. Let's see, Uranus making a sextile to natal Saturn. That's going to be in effect throughout the month. So the work of a creative legal team that may be of benefit to him. Uh, he may be able to get some things organized in creative ways. Uh, in September, Neptune, transiting Neptune, trine natal Venus. That becomes stronger and continues to strengthen throughout the rest of September. Uh, his ability to charm people will be enhanced probably during this period. Uh, Now we also have transiting North Node making a trine to his Mars. Remember, Mars is conjunct his ascendant. That is going to add some strength in a good way to his personal self, his personal energy. That is going to be exact on the 16th, and I feel these nodal aspects more at the time of exactness than I do as we start to move away from that. So he may feel a little bit more emboldened or empowered around August 16th. Uh, we have some semi-sextiles and quincunxes here, which suggests adjustments having to be made. Uh, Jupiter making a quincunx with his natal Chiron. Remember, that's close to his natal Jupiter. So he will probably have to make adjustments as a result of wounding that's going on and restrictions to his luck. Uh, Uranus making a semi-sextile to his sun. Uh, Sun is in his 10th house, professional status and honors. Again, having to make adjustments in the way he does things. Neptune making a quincunx to his natal Mars. Remember, that's conjunct his ascendant. Has to do with himself, his personality. Uh, there are going to probably be some strong adjustments he has to make in the next lunar month that may be related to some injunctions that come down from uh, this or that judge that is overseeing various indictments of Donald Trump. So we'll keep an eye on that, see how that plays out. Okay, and the last thing I want to take a look at is old Vladimir Putin. I always point out there is some disagreement over his exact day or place of birth, but this is the chart that most people use. The birth data has been confirmed by his webmaster, and I've seen it work quite well. A few things to notice in this chart. One, he has sun a whole bunch of other planets in Libra. He can actually be very pleasant when he wants to. He has what comes across as a very pleasant, harmonious side to him. And We have seen that at times. However, all of these planets are in the 12th house. The 12th house has to do with hidden things, behind the scenes kind of things. And remember, he made his career in the KGB. Uh, this fits in perfectly with that. He has his moon in Gemini. He talks well, he communicates well. Uh, that also helps him out. But he has Scorpio rising. Uh, Scorpio is ruled by Pluto, death and transformation. And Pluto is up here, conjunct the cusp of his 10th house of status in society, and also conjunct the South Lunar node. Hence, it's natural for him to acquire a lot of power. And with the conjunction with the lunar nodal axis, he has a bit of craving for power because it's the South Node. He wants to go back to the past. He wants to restore the old Soviet empire. And that's where he is at. Okay. Uh, that's the good, the bad, and the ugly of Putin. And let's see what's going on with his transits. Well, with regard to the hard transits, he's has a lot going on in this upcoming uh, lunar month, and he's had a lot going on this summer. In particular, let me point out for quite a while now, he's had transits going on with Saturn, which speak of frustration and restrictions. Uh, he's had transits going on with Chiron, which speak of wounding. And of course, there have been all these ongoing rumors of health problems. And he's been having uh, transits of involving Uranus to his natal Pluto. Uranus wants to bring about change. Pluto is his power. And we have already seen his power uh, specifically challenged by Prigozhin and the Wagner group back in June. So that's been going on for a while, and there's a lot of it still going on this month. So let's see what we have. We have Neptune making a sesquiquadrate to Venus. Venus is in his first house, so that affects himself. Uh, his thinking has been rather delusional of late. Either he's deluded or he's putting out a lot of lies. That is probably going to continue and intensify throughout the upcoming lunar month. It's strongest on September 3rd. Neptune square Mars. Uh, that has been going on and is going to be pretty strong throughout the upcoming lunar month. And I think this is manifesting in terms of self delusion, which leads to combative rhetoric and actions. That will be exact on September 10th. Transiting Uranus square natal Pluto. These are the challenges to his power. I think there are a lot of people in Russia now who want him out. They want a change in leadership. Uranus making a sesquiquadrate to his natal Chiron. It's not real strong this month, but it's enduring throughout the month. It's been stronger before. It's going to start to get stronger afterwards. Again, uh, this can speak of wounding not only politically, but also in terms of personal health problems. This one, Saturn sesquiquadrate Uranus. That's going to put some restrictions on things. And let's see, where is Uranus in his natal chart again? Let's go back to that. It's up here in his ninth house. It's making a square to things in his 12th house. Uh, so, and it's also making, let's see, it looks like a semi-square to his moon. So when things are affecting natal Uranus, that can also adversely affect 12th house and his moon. He can be feeling frustrated, nervous. Uh, Things he would like to keep hidden may be coming to light. And that's going to be in effect throughout most of this lunar month. Saturn squaring his natal moon. That's going to be in effect through about the last 3 quarters of this lunar month, and then a week beyond into the next lunar month. Again, that says he'll be feeling very frustrated. Trancing Chiron squaring Uranus, uh, wounding most likely of some sort. So could affect his physical health. Let me go back once again and let's see. Uh, Uranus rules Aquarius, which is on the cusp of his fourth house. So things wounding to his personal environment, which, given his power, is almost the whole country now. Saturn sesquiquadrant natal Saturn, again, more frustration, more wounding. Saturn, that is in his 12th house, conjunct his sun, so that really affects him personally. Uh, and right at the end, we have Chiron making a semi-square to his moon, which can reinforce whatever wounding is going on. That's sort of in the last week of this lunar month. Okay, so there's going to be ongoing wounding, frustration, impetus for change in Putin's status during the upcoming lunar month and beyond. And he's got a lot going on when it comes to conjunctions and oppositions uh, to his midpoint. So let's just quickly take a look at some of these. Chiron opposition Mercury and Saturn. More wounding, more frustration. Chiron opposition Saturn, Neptune. More wounding, frustration, maybe even assassination possibility. That relates to Neptune, along with delusions. Pluto conjunct his North Node Chiron midpoint. That's death and transformation. Uh, could have to do with his own wounding and health problems. Could have to do with death and wounding he inflicts upon others. Pluto opposition to, I'm sorry, Neptune opposition to his Pluto ascendant midpoint. Might be rumors uh, about him that affect his power and status. Neptune opposition to his ascendant midheaven midpoint. More the same. Uh, let's see, Saturn opposition to Uranus. Neptune midpoint, frustration and implementing creative visions. North Node opposition to Neptune ascendant midpoint. Uh, Visions being intensified. Notice that both of these are exact on August. Uh, this is actually going to be the 14th here. I've got the one covered up. So it looks like August 4th, but that's actually the 14th. So uh, I'll keep an eye on what happens on those days. Uranus in opposition to the Mars Neptune midpoint. It's not super strong, but it endures throughout the month. Uh, this could be something physical that happens to him or physical that he does to others. Uranus is the unexpected. Uh, Lots of different ways this could work out. Combining Mars and Neptune, this could be his delusions, making him angry, taking unexpected actions. Chiron in opposition to Sun Mercury midpoint. That's in effect throughout most of the lunar month, becomes exact afterwards on September 21st. First, again, wounding to himself and to his brain. Uh, could be transcendence, but in his case, probably more wounding. Saturn in opposition to the Saturn Uranus midpoint. Again, frustration, uh, things not breaking his way. That becomes exact on September 8th. North Node opposition Saturn ascendant. Those frustrations intensify, becomes exact on September 12th. And that's pretty much what's going on in the last week of the lunar month. We have North Node in opposition to his Mars Pluto midpoint, which means the South Node will be in conjunction with it. Uh, he might be particularly violent during this period. He could do violence to others, or it could be done to him, and that is going to become stronger as we go through the rest of September. Good stuff, though. Well, let's see. Let's look at the trines and sextiles. He has Chiron making a sextile to his north node, which means he'll be making a trine to the south node. Well, that's going to intensify the impact of Chiron in his chart, and not necessarily a, um, let's see, discordant way. Let me go back to his chart for a second. Chiron is kind of off by itself here in the third house. And Capricorn makes a sesquiquadrant to Pluto and the south node. And it's not really in close conjunction with Mars. Uh, so it'll be interesting to see how this works out. I don't think he's seeing the light. I hope he sees some light. Maybe we'll get into peace talks. Hasn't happened yet. It's stronger right now. Fades throughout August, but uh, let's see. And also transiting North Node, making a trine to his Mars. That becomes fairly strong throughout a lot of this upcoming lunar month. It strengthens his Mars without a lot of friction, but uh, whether he takes good actions or bad actions, what he does with that energy, that's kind of up to him. I would want to see him do something good. I'd want to see him do something healing, something peaceful. But I'm not going to hold my breath. We'll just have to wait and see. Saturn making a trine to his ascendant during a lot of this lunar month, being exact on September 4th. This can make him a little bit more control, whereas other things involving Saturn will make him frustrated. He may be able to maintain some personal control throughout because of this trine to Saturn. Uh, let's see, we have Uranus making an inconjunct to his Mercury, which is in Libra. He'll probably have to make some adjustments to his thinking, the way he does things. Mercury is his left brain, the logical, verbal brain. Chiron making an inconjunct to his Jupiter. Uh, his luck will probably be wounded a bit. Again, he will probably have to make some adjustments of some sort as a result of wounding. This happens on August 14th, becomes exact on August 14th. It's in effect throughout the lunar month. But it's interesting, a lot of things seem to be culminating on August 14th. We have that Chiron making semi-sextile to Jupiter. We have Saturn in opposition to Uranus. Neptune, uh, midpoint, North Node in opposition to Neptune ascendant midpoint. Pluto, just a couple of days after the 14th, conjunct his North Node Chiron midpoint. And so uh, let's see. it looks like there's going to be a lot of things, whoops, happening in his chart on about the 14th. And so we'll have to, I'm going to have to keep an eye on that day. Like I said, many people may be watching this after the fact because I may be posting it. I might be posting it on the 14th. We'll see. I'm making it today on August 8th, but that's certainly a day that I'm going to keep an eye on with regard to the activities of Mr. Putin. Okay, well, that's it for this presentation. I'm going to stop sharing. So, for the world in general, it may not be the most active month. It's a time, in many respects, to pause and reflect on where we've been and where we're headed. There'll be some minor irritation wounding from that Saturn semi-square Chiron. But for America in particular, there's a lot going on. We're going through wounding as a result of the actions of some of our political leaders. We also see some transcendence from a few people in our society, transcendence from the January 6th committee, from people taking the high road in the Justice Department, I would say. Uh, but for the majority, there's going to be some wounding. And there's probably going to be wounding in particular related to the actions of Mr. Trump. And in this fall, we have those existential threats to our democracy again coming from either without or within, as transing Pluto has a near conjunction to natal Pluto throughout most of the fall. And there could possibly be some violence related to the Trump situation. We'll just have to keep an eye on that. As far as Putin goes, there continue to be forces that want change in Russia and would like to see him out of power. I suspect he does have some health problems that we haven't heard about. Uh, there are things going on with Chiron, have been going on, and will continue to go on, happen in his chart. And uh, he will continue to feel frustrated on many fronts as a result of aspects related to the planet Saturn. So that's it for this upcoming lunar month from August 16th through September 14th. Some of the things I talk about will probably be able to verify. Some of the things may likely happen, but we just don't see them in the news because we don't know everything that's going on with these people. But we'll keep an eye on things and see how it goes. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope to see you again in the future. That's all for now. So long and be well.